Level 1, the negative. Your account is negative, and the number sitting on that screen is small, but it doesn't matter how small it is. The mechanism that responds to it doesn't care about context or circumstance or the delayed paycheck, sitting and processing. It simply activates, like something cold and mechanical turning on inside a wall you cannot see. The overdraft fee hits within hours, $35 assessed by a system that has never heard your name. 3 small charges process while your balance is under zero, and suddenly you owe over $100 in fees on top of the original deficit you were already drowning in. You stand at the gas station pump and your card declines. You pull it out and reinsert it slowly, fingers pressing down with more deliberate pressure the second time, as if that will change anything. The screen flashes the same rejection back at you. There is a line behind you. You can feel the weight of their waiting pressing against your back like a physical thing. Your eyes scan the transaction amount, then the mental number in your head, then the gap between them that you cannot close fast enough. The card declines again, and you breathe through your nose and step aside. The bank has one piece of information about you right now. Your balance is negative, and everything that follows is automated punishment for that single fact. You are not a customer at this level. You are a cost being recovered. Level 2, the indifference. You pull the account back above zero and something like relief moves through you briefly before the monthly maintenance fee withdraws itself without asking. $12, sometimes $15, removed automatically because your average daily balance does not meet the threshold. The threshold is $1,500 sitting untouched in the account. You don't have $1,500 sitting untouched anywhere. So the fee stays, and you're paying to keep an account that is supposed to be holding your money safe for you. The savings rate on your account is essentially decorative. You're earning almost nothing annually on whatever small balance sits there, while the institution lends your deposited money out at rates between 7 and 24% depending on the product. The spread between what they pay you and what they earn from your money is enormous and completely legal and never explained to you in language designed for you to fully absorb. You apply for a credit card, and what arrives is a secured card requiring you to deposit your own money as collateral against your own credit limit. You are lending them your money so they can lend it back and charge you interest for the transaction. The service you receive at this level is not hostile. It is something colder than that. The teller is polite the way that automated politeness is polite, consistent and meaningless and calibrated to prevent escalation. You wait on hold and eventually reach someone reading from a script. There is no relationship here. There is only a transaction, and you're a small number in a system that processes small numbers without any particular feeling about them. Level 3, the recognition. Your direct deposit hits every 2 weeks now without variation, and the bank's algorithm notices before any human does. The pattern of your account shifts from irregular and uncertain to consistent and moderate, and somewhere in a classification system you will never see, your behavior category updates. The credit card offers start arriving through the app, through the mail, through the banners inside your account dashboard. Not the secured card anymore, actual cards with actual limits. The interest rates are still punishing, 22 to 26%, but the door is open, and the door being open matters more than the terms right now. You apply for a small personal loan and it processes in 48 hours and the rate is 11%. And you feel, maybe for the first time in this relationship, that the system is working the way you were told it worked when you were younger. You need something and you apply and someone approves it. The monthly maintenance fee has quietly disappeared because your direct deposit qualifies you for a waiver, and that small absence registers more than it probably should. You have been paying for long enough that not paying feels like a raise. The bank wants to keep you now because you're generating revenue through card usage and loan interest, and the growing balance they are lending out behind the scenes. You matter to them the way a customer matters to a business, precisely as long as you're spending, and you would be replaced without any ceremony if you left them for somewhere better. Level 4, the tilt. You have been consistent for years, and consistency has compounded into something real. The savings account has $18,000 in it, and the investment account holds another $22,000, and the credit card gets paid in full every single month. So the interest rate printed on the card is irrelevant to your actual life. Your credit limit increases without you requesting it, jumping from $4,000 to $9,500 overnight, then to $14,000, the bank extending more rope because your history shows you have never needed it. When you buy a car this time, the rate offered is meaningfully lower than the rate you paid before, not because anyone likes you more as a human being, but because your asset profile has shifted the risk calculation in your favor. The price of borrowing money is lower for you now, and lower rates mean less paid for the same things, and less paid means more capital remaining in your hands, and more capital compounds faster than less capital does. The system is beginning to tilt toward you in the way that compounding works, quietly and steadily at the level of basis points and approval thresholds, and offers you now qualify for that you previously couldn't touch. You walk into a branch and mention you are considering moving your accounts elsewhere, and someone makes an effort to retain you with an offer. That has never happened before, and the difference between automated indifference and a human being motivated to keep you is not subtle. It is the beginning of leverage, and leverage changes everything eventually. Level 5, the priority. Your combined assets are past $150,000 spread across savings and investments, and a retirement account growing faster than you projected, because starting earlier than most has been silently working on your behalf this entire time. The phone line is different now. There's a priority queue at your asset level, and the hold times are shorter, and the person who picks up has actual authority to waive fees and approve exceptions, and resolve things in the same call without escalating to someone you will never speak to. A dedicated banker is assigned to your account with a name and a direct email address and a habit of calling to check in before anything has gone wrong. The attention feels like a relationship and functions like one even if the commercial frame underneath it is always visible if you look. They are attentive because their performance metrics include your retention, and that is fine, because the access is real regardless of the reason behind it. Pre-approved mortgage qualification arrives, and premium credit cards with real reward structures and investment products that weren't on offer 6 months ago. You are a preferred client now, flagged in the internal system as someone worth protecting, named in a way that changes how every interaction at the institution begins. The rules haven't changed, but the space inside them has grown noticeably wider in every direction that matters to you. Level 6, the asset. The threshold is somewhere between $500,000 and $1 million in investable assets, and crossing it changes the texture of every conversation you have with the institution. You are no longer being sold consumer products. You're being consulted, which is a different posture entirely. Someone is asking about your goals, your family structure, your timeline, your risk tolerance, and the legacy you're trying to build or protect. The bank is assembling a full picture of your financial life, not out of any altruistic instinct, but because a full picture allows them to capture more of your activity under their umbrella. Loan approvals move faster. The paperwork is lighter. The rates are better by margins that over the life of a mortgage amount to tens of thousands of dollars in real money. When a wire transfer goes sideways at 11 o'clock on a Tuesday and you need it resolved before an international window closes, it gets resolved in the same conversation because the person handling it has genuine authority and has been told whose account this is. No callbacks, no escalation, no scripts read from a screen. You are an asset to the institution now, not a customer, not a number. A named asset whose departure would appear as a loss on someone's quarterly review. The distance between this and level 2 is not a matter of better service delivered through the same institution. It is a fundamentally different institution operating inside the same building, with different protocols and different personnel and different thresholds for what constitutes urgent. Level 7, the invisible shelf. Above $5 million in assets, the institution begins offering things that are not posted anywhere publicly available. Products that exist behind relationships, not behind marketing. Rates that are negotiated rather than printed. Access to investment structures unavailable to retail customers because they require minimum commitments and relationship history that takes years to establish. Your mortgage rate is not slightly lower than what level 3 would see. It is meaningfully lower, the kind of difference that over 30 years builds a number large enough to buy another property with. Your advisory team is not a single generalist anymore. One specialist handles your investment allocation, another manages your tax strategy, a third coordinates your estate and trust structures, and they meet with you quarterly in a room that looks nothing like the room where anyone below level 4 has ever sat. The chairs are better, and the stakes of the conversation are different, and everyone present is aware of both facts simultaneously. The discretion built into the bank's internal policies is exercised entirely in your favor at this level, not because the laws are different, but because the policies have room, and the room gets used for the people whose relationships justify the exercise. Fees that technically apply are waived before you ask. Exceptions that formally require manager approval are approved before the manager is formally consulted. The system that was automated and indifferent when your balance was negative is now human and attentive and oriented toward yes as a default position. Level 8, the relationship. Private banking is not wealth management, the way a private flight is not a seat upgrade. They both transport you, but the comparison ends at the word transport. You do not have a banker at this level. You have a private banker managing fewer than 20 relationships simultaneously, whose entire professional existence is organized around those relationships and nothing else. This person knows things about your life that your accountant might not know. They know about the foundation. They know your estate plan's gaps before you articulate them. They know what you're protecting and what you're trying to build across generations. The deals are bespoke in the actual meaning of that word, custom-made for you specifically rather than adapted from a standard product that almost fits. The interest rate on a loan is negotiated in a conversation, not pulled from a published schedule. The minimum required for a co-investment opportunity is waived because the relationship makes the waiver sensible. Documentation that would take a retail customer 2 weeks to process gets handled internally in 48 hours because the people processing it know whose account it is before they begin. Every legal degree of discretion available inside the institution's policies is exercised in your favor without you needing to ask for it or even be aware it is happening. The rules have not been broken. They have simply been interpreted with a generosity that scales with how much your departure would cost the people responsible for keeping you. Losing you does not appear as a missed bonus. It appears on someone's performance review as a named failure, and that is a different kind of consequence entirely. You are a relationship now, not a client, not an account, not a number in any system. The institution's connection to you is a line item in someone's annual review, a figure in a retained assets report, a name in a meeting about clients worth protecting at all costs. The automated system that charged you $35 for being $4 overdrawn still exists in the same building. You just never have to touch it anymore. And that distance between the person standing at the gas station pump, watching the card decline in front of strangers, and the person whose private banker calls before anything has gone wrong to ask how the quarter is looking, is not a distance measured in time or discipline or even money alone. It is a distance measured in how the institution decides you are worth treating. And that decision was never about you as a person. It was always about your balance. The number on the screen is everything. It always was.